All right, welcome to today's verdict, where legal issues meet real-world consequences. Coming up in today's verdict, as immigration policies continue to impact kids and families across New York, the Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights is taking action to protect their rights. We will learn how the organization is supporting children and why advocacy matters now more than ever. Then Governor Kathy Hochul's budget falls short on funding for civil legal services, putting thousands of New Yorkers, including residents in the Bronx, at risk. We'll break down what's at stake and why this under-the-radar issue matters to you. We bring you the stories, the experts, and the advice you need to navigate the issues that matters most. So stay tuned with us. Today's verdict starts right now. All right, hello, welcome to today's verdict, the interactive show that puts your legal rights front and center and helps you navigate the issues that affect your life every day. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. Well, remember, we want to hear from you. Tweet me at David Lesh and use hashtag #AskToday'sVerdict if you have a question. And of course, don't forget to check us out at Bronxnet.tv. The Young Center for Immigrant Children's Rights works to protect the rights and well-being of immigrant children, advocating for their safety and providing access to legal representation and due process. From preventing prolonged detention to addressing family separation, the organization fights for children navigating complex immigration systems. Well, joining us to talk more about their work is Abena Hutchful, Senior Policy and Litigation Attorney. Abena, thanks for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Really, listen, we love the organization. We think it's great. But let's talk a little about you first. How did you... you're an attorney, but how did you get involved in this kind of work?
Yeah, this is personal for me. I'm a daughter of Ghanaian immigrants who we came to this country when I was 11. And I'm fortunate to have had, a mother who was able to navigate the immigration system much easier than families are able to today. And I, was educated between Ghana and the U.S. And ultimately after law school, this was right, in the middle of the first Trump administration, as I saw families being torn apart and children detained. It was really a natural calling for me to join an organization like the Young Center, which advocates for the best interests of immigrant children. To make sure they're seen and heard and treated with dignity. And so it made total sense for me to do this
for the last 10 years, 5 to 10 years, things have really changed in terms of immigrants and their rights.
Yeah.
Has it specifically changed for children, or has it basically been the same over the last decade?
No, there've been a lot of changes, a lot of threats for children, and a lot of advancements as well. There has been a sustained effort by advocates to strengthen the protections, particularly for the most vulnerable children, unaccompanied children, children who come without a parent or guardian, children who are at risk of trafficking. There's legislation, the Trafficking Victims Protection and Reauthorization Act, that Congress passed, bipartisan, to ensure that those children have access to safety, that they are not sent back to dangerous conditions without, a proper review.
So how does it work? I mean, let's say you were 11 at the time, but let's say an 11-year-old ends up coming in without a parent. Somehow somebody gets them in here, and they're here, and they're not legal. Where do they go first? Do they go to a processing center? Where do they go?
Yeah, that's a great question. So children are received at the border just like adults are and go into the Department of Homeland Security's custody, right? And what the Trafficking Victims Protection and Reauthorization Act does is require that those children are transferred into a child welfare, the Department of Health and Human Services custody within 3 days. Once we establish that they are unaccompanied and they are going to be kept in federal custody until they can be released to a trusted adult caregiver, they must be kept in this, child welfare context.
So I assume there has to be some type of investigation as to who the next next of kin is, or who might be able to take care of them once they're released. Am I correct?
Yeah, and there is that, there are procedures for for reviewing the sponsors, or what they're called in the immigration context, for each child, to make sure that they're they are related to the child, or do have an established relationship with the child, and can care for that child.
I can only imagine that the child must be scared to death for the first 3 days, basically staying in a facility that they don't really know anybody.
Right.
And I assume they're giving a bed and housing and some kind of and the food, 3 meals, or what goes on during those 3 days?
Yeah, so there is actually a settlement agreement that is the result of decades of litigation that establishes basic protections, just the conditions of children's care and custody, that is currently under attack. The Trump administration is trying to get out of its obligations under this settlement agreement, and basically argue that there is no need for oversight for children who are in federal custody, which we, of course, are appalled by, and want to make sure that those protections stay in place.
Well, what are those protections?
So those protections,
like right now, what are the protections?
Right now, the protections are that a child should be placed in a state licensed facility, that they should have access. There are basic requirements that they have access to nutrition, they have access to a warm bed, that they have contact also with family. There's also
what about school?
So actually, children have access to education services in federal custody, but not all children have access to state under the state standards of education. Have access to public schools. So people may be surprised to know that there are dozens of facilities here in New York where unaccompanied children are kept, and they don't have access to public school. They don't have access to DOE schools.
There's no virtual school or home school.
No,
there's no school at all.
There are what they would call education centers. So these programs have some education programming for kids, and some do try to ensure that they are in keeping, right, with the state standards of where the child is actually going to be, where home is, where they're going to be released to. But there is, very little oversight and ensuring that that those standards are actually adhered to. The other issue is that this is supposed to be a temporary placement. It's only supposed to be until their adult caregiver can be vetted, that they are established as the child's relative.
Is that by statute, or is that just?
That is by the statute.
And so, do you happen to know how much time that is that they have to? How much?
Yeah. So it's supposed to be as promptly. They're supposed to be released as promptly as possible. And on average, particularly if their relationship can be easily established as the child's parent or biological relative, it should be, and we've seen, like a matter of weeks. But what's happening now, whereas before the Trump administration came into office, on average it was no more than a month. Now we're seeing it's gone up sixfold. So children are languishing in custody for more than 6 months. Even after, even children who have caregivers identified, their caregivers have done everything they can, have provided all of the documentation to prove that they can care for the child. They are being, the goalpost is
Always
being
moved.
pushed further and further by changing policies that make it virtually impossible.
Let me ask you a question. What is your organization doing to help at this point?
So our organization tries to fight in a number of ways. Our flagship program is called the Child Advocate Program. We work with, it's an interdisciplinary team of social workers and attorneys that work with volunteers from the community to ensure that children are accompanied. The children whose cases we're appointed to are often the most vulnerable and don't have, oftentimes don't have access to an attorney even. They don't have an attorney representing them in their immigration case. And so to ensure that they have somebody who's going to be listening to them, also speaking for them. We provide best interest.
You also have some volunteer training, am I correct? To try and let's get that out there so everybody knows.
So we work with these volunteers, bilingual volunteers, to visit with the children every week, understand their personal histories and what they want, and then we put the child's voice, make sure that it's represented in our recommendations to decision makers. This is about their custody, as well as their immigration case, to ensure that their best interests are paramount. And so our volunteer training, as you mentioned, our next one is March 21st and 22nd. It's a 2-day training where we work primarily people in the community, teach them about the child detention system and help them better understand the pressing needs at this time. And then we match them to a young person that we're appointed to. They begin the work of visiting with them and learning the child's story, and they're supervised by one of our staff to make sure that everything that they're learning and the child is asking is duly represented in our
And I understand there's
advocacy.
an Albany Day as well. Are you going to be going up to Albany and trying to fight for this type of
Yeah,
stuff?
so we work in coalition with groups like the Care for Immigrant Families Coalition, the New York Immigration Coalition, to fight for laws and policies that will protect immigrants. And what we're doing in Albany right now, our focus is on trying to get the Access to Representation Act passed. This is a bill by Senator Brad Hoylman Siegel and Catalina Cruz that would provide a universal right to representation to any New Yorker in immigration proceedings to make sure that no one has to appear in court alone.
What tips would you give to somebody who's watching today, a parent or a guardian or somebody, and they realize that one of their relatives or somebody has been taken into custody, an 11-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever? What would you say to them? What should they do?
And it's a very terrifying and it's unfortunately a reality for so many New Yorkers. The first thing that a person needs is access to representation. But unfortunately, we have a system where funding for legal services is being cut, federal funding is being cut, and there aren't enough qualified attorneys to represent the number of people that are in immigration proceedings. I would tell someone who is in dire need of help to contact organizations like Make the Road, Bronx Defenders that run rapid response programs for representation. I would also tell the neighbors and friends and people who are concerned about about people, immigrant community members, to pick up the phone and call the representatives and make sure we pass access to representation. We have an opportunity here to lead in the country and show the rest of the country that immigrant rights matter and are just as important as any other fundamental rights. That it's important for us to get it right this time. We have the funding. We can make sure that what we saw this past summer, what we've been seeing, over the course of the Trump administration with our neighbors being torn from their families and detained for prolonged periods.
It's hard.
That doesn't have to happen.
Listen, we hope you come back here maybe the next couple of months and let us know how the organization is doing.
Yeah, it would be really great to share some good news, to share that we've passed access representation. But March 10th, anybody who's near or can go to Albany, we would love to see folks show up for the lobby day that we have planned there.
We have that up on the screen.
Yeah, and to contact the representatives and make sure that they register their support for this act.
All right, Abena Hutchful, thank you very much.
Thank
All right,
you.
well, don't go anywhere because today's verdict will be right back after this short break. Hang in there. right, welcome back to today's verdict. Civil legal services are essential for protecting housing, immigrant rights, and access to justice. But currently, a critical funding gap in New York's interest on lawyer account, also known as IOLA funds, threatens those services. Even after Governor Hochul's 30-day budget amendments, the fund remains $25 million short of what advocates say is needed to maintain services, staff, and critical infrastructure. Joining us to explain the implication and what's at stake for communities across the state is Angela Fernandez, Executive Director at Lawyers Alliance. Angela, thanks for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I only know about IOLA accounts from the accounts we keep in my law office and what we have to do to protect clients' funds, so we'll talk about that for a second. But let's talk a little bit about you.
Great.
And how did you get involved in the Lawyers Alliance?
So I have actually been working in the nonprofit sector for almost 30 years. And a little personal background is that my mother is from the Dominican Republic and strongly encouraged me to go to law school. And she was very clear, when you receive that law degree, you have to use it for good. You have to use it to uplift our community, which is what I've tried to do for the last 30 years. I was the executive director of the Northern Manhattan Coalition for Immigrant Rights for 10 years. I was the president of the Dominican Day Parade in 2015 and 2016, leading a turnaround for the parade. And I was also the executive director of Safe Passage Project of New York. I got to know Lawyers Alliance when I was running one of the organizations I ran and needed legal help. And so someone told me, reach out to Lawyers Alliance. They will provide you with a free attorney to help you with the legal issue you were having at the nonprofit. So many years later, when I had the opportunity to apply to become its executive director, I ran through the application process and feel very fortunate that I was hired to have this opportunity to work with hundreds of nonprofits across the 5 boroughs, providing them with legal representation on a whole host of issues.
Which is so important because so many people can't afford an attorney. And sometimes, if one could be appointed for them or pro bono or, some way to get them somebody to speak for them, a voice for them, it's very important. Let's get back to IOLA.
Great.
Right, I know what it is, but a lot of people don't know what it is. What's an IOLA account?
So IOLA was created in the 1980s. It is a fund that is where the interest from private attorneys' escrow accounts, that interest gets put into the IOLA fund, and then that IOLA fund gets distributed to civil legal service nonprofits that can provide free legal services around housing, around family law, immigration, public benefits.
Who decides that? Who decides where it goes? In other words, what particular agencies get what based out of my IOLA account interest?
So IOLA is an entity itself that will put out what's called RFPs and will invite nonprofits to apply for funding. So the nonprofit themselves have to make the argument of why they need access to the IOLA funding so that they can pay for attorneys, staffing, keeping the lights on, so that they can serve people who come to these organizations seeking this kind of legal representation.
What happens in terms of what these nonprofits have been able to get over the last 10 years? Have they been getting more out of it? Have they been getting less out of the IOLA accounts? Has it been more oversight? What's been happening?
Well, IOLA has a very, very transparent oversight process. You can actually go to the IOLA website and learn about how IOLA functions, learn about the organizations they fund. And IOLA actually it's right now in the second year of a 5-year, multi-year contract, which provides stability to nonprofits. So if a nonprofit knows that over the next 5 years, they're going to be receiving, let's just say, for example, $100,000 a year to be able to pay for attorneys, for the rent, for all the things needed to provide services, that allows organizations to really plan both short-term and long-term depending on the needs of the community.
It's a budget, basically.
It's a budget, and it's really important for nonprofits to be able to have this ability to plan, to serve the community in the best way and in the strongest way possible.
So what does Lawyers Alliance do? How do they advocate? Through lobbying, through TV? I don't know, you tell me.
So Lawyers Alliance, well, first there's something called a campaign. Okay. When you are advocating for a budget item, for example, at the state level, you develop a campaign. And in that campaign, it's going to include, how do we talk about this issue? How do we make sure that we share important facts? How do we talk to each of the elected officials and explain how important this funding is? Lawyers Alliance is part of the New York State Legal Services Coalition, made up of numerous legal services nonprofits that's goal and role each year is to make sure that funding is maintained, and along with legislative asks that we do as well.
I mean, but you would think that an attorney's IOLA account, or whatever IOLA accounts there are, that it's just a given. Whatever interest that is earned doesn't go to the client, doesn't go to the lawyer, goes to non-for-profits that are going to help the community with respect to legal issues. Mm-hmm. Where's the dispute? I don't understand.
That's exactly what we are asking ourselves. What we have seen is that in this year's New York State budget proposal, they're not allowing for the full spending authority that would allow IOLA to fund nonprofits so they can continue doing the work that they need to do.
So what are they going to do with that money?
By 25%. We don't know what they're going to do with that money, but that money is not taxpayer funded. Remember, it comes from interest from these accounts. And this is why we are pushing and advocating. That money has already been earmarked and planned for. Governor Hochul is not agreeing to the full spending authority, and that's why we're advocating.
Has this happened before?
It did. It happened about 2 years ago, and we organized many law firms along with advocacy organizations to ensure that the full spending authority was maintained, and we won.
What else would they do with this money? Let's say Governor Hochul and let's say that 20%. Are they giving it to non-legal entities?
It's not clear, and I don't know what they're doing with that money.
Well, you would think the best place for it to be is with nonprofits that help the legal community.
Absolutely, and in a very cost-effective manner.
Now, if you're telling me that they're taking that 20% and they're making sure it goes to other legal entities, but it's your position that you're best able to control those funds and know where they're supposed to go, correct?
Absolutely, and especially because the organizations that were supposed to receive that funding already went through a very rigorous RFP application process.
They budgeted for it.
Exactly.
And they know what they're spending on and who they should hire and how many staff they need. And now all of a sudden you're saying, no, well, 20% you're not getting now.
Well, and that 25% decrease is actually going to force nonprofits to turn away clients, to lay off staff, to reduce services. And at this particular moment, with the economic pressures that New York State residents are undergoing, along with the federal budget cuts that a lot of nonprofits are encountering, I mean, this is truly a lifeline.
Well, what are the next steps that the organization is taking?
So we are going to have an advocacy day on March 17th in Albany. We are continuing to meet with elected officials. Today, there's an online lobby day with different nonprofits meeting with elected officials to talk about the importance of maintaining the full spending authority. And we encourage people to go to the New York State Legal Services Coalition to learn more about how they can support.
I mean, it just seems so important to make sure that our community has free legal representation, pro bono representation, something. Because a lot of people just don't know their rights, and to take that away would really be a shame.
Another thing I want to share with you is that IOLA in the last fiscal year helped 700,000 New Yorkers with a whole array of legal issues, generating a savings of $5 billion, providing individuals and New York families with economic security and savings.
Important. Is there any particular area, immigration, criminal law, that it goes to, or
so it
runs the gamut?
So I'm glad that you said that. It doesn't go to criminal law because criminal law has its own funding. Okay. So this is specific for civil legal services. Housing is the #1 issue. I mean, without this funding, people will be at risk of losing their housing because, as we know, if you are in housing court, having a housing attorney could be the difference between
Correct.
staying at home or being homeless. Housing is the biggest one. Immigration is also a big one. Disability protections, public benefits protections, job security. So there's just a whole array of ways in which this funding protects New Yorkers.
Very quickly, is there a way to reach you or the organization? How do they find you? Website, something?
Sure. So actually, if you run a nonprofit and need legal services directly for your nonprofit, you can reach out to Lawyers Alliance for New York. Our website is lawyersalliance.org, or follow us on Instagram at Lawyers Alliance. To be part of this advocacy effort, go to the New York State Civil Legal Services Coalition website to learn more about how you can help us.
Thank you, Angela.
Thank you so much.
And maybe you'll come back and say hello.
I would love to.
All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for sharing their expertise, and of course you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check it out on YouTube. Also, remember, if there's a legal issue or topic you'd like to see in a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to contact me at davidlesh@bronxnet.org or tweet me at davidlesh. Make sure to hashtag Ask Today's Verdict. From myself and all of us at Today's Verdict, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach a verdict. I'm David Lesh, and we'll see you again soon with a new episode of Today's Verdict right here on Bronxnet. You take care.
Thank you.